Watch it, Alan. I'm shooting.
Say hello to my little minion, everybody. How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. Once again, I am not in my typical location. It does seem that I am at other people's houses more than my own house on this channel. At least that's how it's been for the past few months. Say hello to Rufus. I'm at his house for a couple weeks, but I still wanted to get a video out to you guys, so as a result I couldn't be in my typical location. Typical disclaimer, I apologize if the lighting is off and if the audio is a little off. This was just the best place in this house to film, and all the rest of it. I do apologize for the lack of consistency in backgrounds, but hopefully we have a good video for you guys today. And we got a cute little dog here anyway. He's a terrier, and this being a horror channel, you can't spell terrier without terror. And for the people out there who are like, oh, terror spelled with an O and there's no O in terrier, it's a joke, relax. Terrier owners understand that joke. Anyway, let's get into the video. Foreign horror movies. I live in America, and there are plenty of American horror movies that I love. You know, Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Jaws are some of my favorite movies of all time. Maniac, obviously, I clearly love Maniac. There are plenty of great American horror movies out there, but I have always loved foreign horror as well. You know, I enjoyed going out of my comfort zone when I was exploring the horror genre. You know, I had seen so many other horror films, and I wanted to stretch my legs and see horror movies from different countries just to get a different perspective on the horror genre. Because whenever you go into a different culture, their filmmaking can be a little different, and the culture is a little different, therefore they handle horror in different ways. A common complaint that you hear, especially nowadays, from not just people in the horror genre, but fans of movies in general, a lot of people complain about the lack of originality in movies. They say there's a lot of unoriginal stuff out there, which I understand the frustration. We're getting a lot of sequels and remakes and legacy sequels and franchise movies, you know, superhero films, cinematic universes and things like that, and people have gotten frustrated and they want to see more original stuff. There is still original stuff out there, though, you know, in independent cinema and outside of the Hollywood system. As much as I praise independent cinema and I want originality, I don't like trashing on mainstream movies because mainstream cinema has given us a lot of good stuff. Not just in the past, but we've gotten good stuff in recent years as well. But I do understand the frustration with constantly getting the same kind of movies over and over and over again. But something I like to say to people who are frustrated with the lack of originality in movies, especially the horror genre, since I'm a horror guy, I think a good way to get originality, or at least experience something different, is by watching foreign horror movies. Because, as I said at the beginning, different cultures, they handle movies in different ways, they find different things scary. Some countries, their censorship laws and the way they handle things are different. Some are a little stricter with censoring stuff, some are less strict when censoring stuff. And so when it comes to people being frustrated by a lack of originality, I say, if you're looking for originality, step outside of your country, because you'll get it'll introduce you to a lot of good stuff. A lot of interesting movies, a lot of original movies, or at least original to your culture. But some people can be intimidated by going out of their comfort zone, not just with movies, but with other things in general, and with art in general. Which I kind of understand. You know, you go into a comfortable area, it can be hard to take yourself out of that. I have met plenty of people who don't watch foreign films, and I find that kind of sad because you are depriving yourself of a lot of good stuff. So I wanted to make a list of 10 foreign horror movies for beginners, for people who have not branched out from America and explored these movies from different countries. Now, a few things to clarify before we get into the list here. Yes, the title of this video does say Top 10, but that was more to kind of grab people's attention. This is not a ranking video. I'm not really saying that movies on this list are better than movies off this list, and I don't necessarily think that the number 10 spot on this list is better than the number 1 spot on this list. These are just 10 foreign horror movies that I would recommend to people branching out from their culture and looking into films from other countries. And the way I wanted to do this, you will see a couple English-speaking countries on this list, but for the most part I wanted to try to get movies that where they didn't speak English, but there will be a couple English-speaking movies on this list. And I wanted to try and get as many different countries as I could on this list. So I have one movie per country that I have on here, and there are definitely going to be some countries that I have missed because I'm only doing 10 spots. So yeah, I mean, if people are interested, I might do a part 2 to this later on, but like we're going to stick with these countries for now because just because these are the movies that I picked. And a little disclaimer here. I am a huge Italian horror fan. I've talked about Italian horror a lot on this channel, so I decided to not include any Italian horror movies on this list, just because I've talked about it so much on this channel. I mean, you can go on my channel and you'll find a good amount of Italian horror reviews, and I will definitely be talking about more Italian horror in the future, just because I love Italian horror so much. But I wanted to try to, pick something, go to a different country, kind of, like I said, spread my wings a little. So we're excluding Italian horror from this list, but keep in mind I am a huge Italian horror fan. And I decided not to include any horror movies from Canada because I don't think Canada needs any help to get American eyes on their movies. There have been so many great Canadian horror movies that are praised in the horror community. David Cronenberg is a Canadian filmmaker, and he gave us, Videodrome and The Brood and Shivers. Fantastic films. Black Christmas came from Canada, which was a very underrated movie and a heavy influence on the slasher genre. Came out before Halloween, but it is getting more recognition nowadays. Like, I love Canadian horror movies, but I mean, it's not that hard to get American audiences to watch Canadian horror movies because they're so close, and I hope I'm making sense with that. But yeah, so I'm not including Canadian horror movies on this list just because I think those are easy movies for people in the horror community who, especially here in America, to reach out to and watch. So, on that note, let's get into the movies. Again, this is in no particular order, so let's get started. At number 10, we're starting out in the UK with Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde.
This is the sensuous Sister Hyde, the most evil man you'll ever meet.
Stay away from her.
Now, like I said, for the first couple of spots, I picked English-speaking countries, just because they are a little easier for... there's no language barrier to distract someone or to intimidate somebody to check these out, because people can be intimidated by subtitles, and I'll get into that in a minute. But yeah, so for the first couple of spots, we have some English-speaking films. For Britain and the UK, you gotta go with Hammer. Hammer has been a huge part of British horror cinema and a big part of horror in general. When you had the kind of the boom of Hammer horror movies in the 50s, those were transition movies. I'm fascinated by transition eras where the Hammer horror films got a little bloodier. They showed a little more cleavage and stuff. There are so many great Hammer horror movies that you could recommend, but I went with Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde. I saw this movie last year, and I absolutely loved it. The reason I picked this one is because it's a proto-slasher movie. I did a whole video on proto-slasher movies. Please check that out, me shamelessly whoring myself out. But it's a proto-slasher movie, and there are many slasher fans in the horror genre, so I think, one, because of the fact that this is an English-speaking film, and the fact that it does feel kind of like a horror movie, but a period piece. I'm sorry, it feels more like a slasher movie, but a period piece slasher movie. I think it can be a little easier for people to go into it and feel less intimidated by the cultural barriers and stuff like that.
In this film, you will actually see the sinister Dr. Jekyll change in mind and body into the totally evil Sister Hyde.
It is I who exist, Dr. Jekyll, not you.
Also, Jekyll and Hyde, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is one of my favorite classic horror stories, and I love plenty of Jekyll and Hyde movies. You know, the 1930s Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is great. There's this very underrated version of it called Edge of Sanity. Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde from Hammer is one of my favorite versions of the story, and it's an interesting look at the story because, you know, in the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, you have Dr. Jekyll who creates this elixir that brings out the savage side of humanity. That's the very basic plot. And when he drinks it, he turns into this hideous and deformed, monstrous alter ego named Mr. Hyde. But in Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, he creates this elixir which turns him into a woman, Sister Hyde. And it's a great movie because it has some Jack the Ripper elements. It has this interesting, you know, look at identity where, you know, because Dr. Jekyll is a man and he transforms into a woman. And there's interesting sequences in this movie, a couple interesting sequences where he is in the body of Dr. Jekyll, but he kind of bleeds over to Sister Hyde, which is, this movie came out around 1972, so that was something you didn't see too often at that time, at least in mainstream movies. So yeah, it has some, has a very interesting story, a very interesting take on the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde story. Plenty of blood. I wouldn't say it's the most graphic proto-slasher film out there, but you do get plenty of blood splatter and some very well done stalking scenes, very well done killing scenes. And like I said, the whole concept of, you know, this guy taking an elixir and turning into this woman who is this really sadistic character, very fascinating, very interesting. So I would highly recommend this if you're looking to explore more foreign horror movies. I think, you know, watching some English horror films or some horror movies from the UK is a good way to go because of the, there's no language barrier. But yeah, Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, one of my favorite Hammer movies. Would highly recommend checking that one out. We're going to stick with the English-speaking horror movies, and at number 9 we have an Australian horror film, Black Waters.
Is it still here?
No one can hear them.
So how do you figure we get out of here without being eaten?
No one can help them.
So what's your idea?
Goodbye.
Now, I have talked about Black Waters a few times on this channel. I think it's a very underrated movie. I love animal attack flicks. I love killer animal movies. That is my comfort genre. And Black Waters is a killer crocodile movie. And for me, it's one of the most underrated and one of the best. The plot is very simple. It is basically a survival movie. You have these 3 tourists, they're going throughout Australia, and they want to go fishing in a mangrove swamp. So they have this guide take them out there, And while they're in the middle of the mangrove swamp in this very murky water, a crocodile overturns their boat, kills their guide, and they have to hide in a tree. And like I said, the water is very murky. You can't really see what's going on, but you know there's a crocodile in there. And so they're trying to figure out a way to get out of this situation with the crocodile in the water waiting for them.
What happened?
It's a fucking croc.
Get out! Get out of the water now!
I love simplicity, especially when it comes to horror. And more complex ideas are great as well. There are plenty of horror movies with more complex, more weird ideas or more extravagant ideas that I do love, and we will see some on this list. But when it comes to being scary and tension, I do think simplicity can work so well. And this movie could not be simpler. It's just people trapped in a tree with murky water all around them and a hungry crocodile waiting to get them. And what I love about this movie is it's set up perfectly. Something that bugs me and that bugs a lot of people is when stupidity is the only thing moving the plot forward in your horror movie. I'm okay with a couple of stupid decisions here and there, and I understand that in stressful situations people can make mistakes, but for me it's lazy writing when the only thing moving the plot forward is characters making stupid decisions. Sometimes it can work, very rarely can it work, but most of the time it doesn't. And what I love about Black Water is the people don't have a lot of options, and they're put in this dangerous situation. Their boat gets overturned, so you have that typical thing where, they have a cell phone, why can't they just call for help? In this movie it makes perfect sense. Their boat was overturned, they fell in the water, the phone got wet, doesn't work anymore. Very simple. But you don't have too many options in that situation. That's a great way to create tension in a movie and not have to rely on the characters making stupid decisions. You take away as many options as they have. It's like, okay, we have choices. We can do this, which is not good, or we can do that, which is not good. But we gotta do one of these because we're gonna die if we don't do something else. And the movie works a lot like Jaws. We don't see the crocodile too often because the water is murky, but you know what a crocodile can do, and it does pop up every now and again. And it just draws out the tension more and more and more because there are times where the people don't have many choices and they have to get in the water. The fact that the water is murky is another brilliant aspect of it because, like I've said, you can't see the crocodile, so it could be anywhere around you. It might be gone, but it might be right next to you, which creates some incredibly suspenseful moments. So yeah, Black Water from Australia, a great suspenseful movie, highly underrated. I thoroughly recommend this one. It's just a good, simple, suspenseful horror movie.
3 cheeky monkeys sitting in a tree, teasing Mr. Crocodile. Can't catch me.
At the number 8 spot, we're going to Mexico with Santa Sangre.
This is strange. It's holy blood.
Now, the reason I have Santa Sangre at the number 8 spot is because it is a movie from Mexico, but they still speak English throughout the film, so there's still not a language barrier when watching this film. And this was a Mexico-Italian co-production, and I believe it was produced by Dario Argento's brother, Claudio Argento, who produced many of Dario Argento's films. And there are quite a few scenes in this that feel very Suspiria-esque, which, for an Italian horror fan like me, I love. But this is what I'm talking about when I mean liking more weird, out-there ideas for horror, and this is what I mean when finding originality, because there is originality in American films, but you can also find originality in foreign films. Going out of your comfort zone, you can find things that feel very different. This movie was directed by Alejandro Jodorowsky. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that. I'm going to apologize for mispronouncing many names in this video if I use them, because it's just typical dumb movie fan's brain. Anyway, Alejandro Jodorowsky, who filmed the movie El Topo, so he's very familiar with making weird horror movies, or weird movies in general. But this film is, it can be considered a little bit on the artsier side of things, but it is such an original idea. You have this guy who, when he was a kid, he worked at a circus. His mom was that person, I don't know what they're called, some kind of acrobatics act where, they attach their hair to a rope or something, and they're put in the air, and they do all these tricks and stuff like that. So that's what his mom does. And she also runs this cult that worships this woman that had no arms. And his father was an asshole, and his mom was insane. One thing leads to another. The mother finds out that the father was having an affair. There's this bloody altercation, and she gets her arms cut off. The kid is taken away and put in an asylum. We skip 2 years later. He's now an adult. He leaves the asylum, reconnects with his mother, who now has no arms, and he vows to be her arms for her. And she manipulates him into getting revenge on various people for her and doing these various violent acts for her as her arms.
I'm ordering my hands to kill her. Kill her! Kill her!
It's a weird movie, but in a great way, and it's a fascinating film. So well done, and like I said, such a unique horror movie. There's not a huge body count in this film, but the fascinating thing about this movie is this character being his mother's arms. Because there's some scenes where, like, the way he does it is in certain scenes, he's literally standing behind her and being her arms. Like, she wants to play the piano, so he sits behind her and is playing the piano for her. Like I said, it's a weird movie in the best possible way. And the fact that they mostly speak English in the movie does, make it easier for some people who might not want to read subtitles to check out the film. But it's just all around a good movie. I mean, it's a movie that, yes, is not for everybody, but it's one of those movies that, while it's not for everybody, I do think everybody needs to check it out at least once, because regardless of how you feel about it, I guarantee you're never going to forget it after watching this movie. Sangre. Very original idea, and a very weird idea, and I like original weird stuff, so what can I say? Next, we are finally getting into some non-English speaking films, so these will require subtitles for you to watch them. You might be able to find dubbed versions of these, but I encourage you to, if you are just getting into foreign horror movies, I encourage you to watch these with the subtitles. It can be very rewarding. We're going to start in South Korea with I Saw the Devil. I love Asian horror movies. I love Asian cinema in general. When I was first going outside of American films, Asian cinema was one of my first dives outside into other countries when it comes to film. That was because of my friend Rob from the movie theater that I used to work at. He introduced me to a lot of Japanese horror movies, and then I expanded to various other countries. And I love South Korean horror movies. I do enjoy South Korean movies. My favorite movie of all time is Old Boy from 2003. So just to give you a hint of my tastes. Now, I Saw the Devil was directed by Kim Ji-woon, who directed another one of my favorite South Korean horror movies, A Tale of Two Sisters. And when it comes to these movies, I have a hard time. I go back and forth between the two over which I like more. Now, I Saw the Devil is a revenge movie. You have this guy who is a bit of a secret agent whose wife gets murdered by this sadistic serial killer played by Min-Sing Choi, who played Odaisu in Old Boy, so that made it interesting for me. But yeah, so you have this sadistic serial killer and this secret agent, and he wants to get revenge on this killer for killing his wife, but he doesn't want to just kill him, he wants to torture this guy. So he beats the shit out of him, then he gets to a hospital, gets fixed up, and then the secret agent locates this guy again and just starts beating him up more. He wants this guy to suffer, basically, for killing his wife. Now, the interesting thing about this is, you have the secret agent who is strong, and you have the serial killer who is intelligent, so it's kind of a brains versus brawn sort of scenario. Even though the secret agent does have intelligence to him, the serial killer is just more sadistic with his intelligence. So it's these two extremes, going at each other. There's a good amount of violence in this movie. There's some very interesting set pieces in this film. It goes certain directions that are unpleasant, which is to be expected in a serial killer movie. I would call this a serial killer movie. And the reason it works is because there are some scenes that have a little more action to them, that they can... This is definitely a horror movie, but there are some scenes that can feel like they're out of an action movie. Not too many of them, but there are sequences like that. But it is this game played between the killer and the secret agent as they're going up against each other that make this film so fascinating. This has one of my favorite stabbing sequences in a horror movie, where the killer is in a car with this group of people. He starts stabbing them, and the camera kind of rotates in the car as it's happening. It's very, very well done. But yeah, it is a bit faster paced, where Santa Sangre is a little slower paced, and that's still a great movie. But this one's a little faster paced, which I think can help people just getting into foreign films go into it a little better. The thing about subtitles is, people can be, they can be intimidated by subtitles because, the concept is you have to read while paying attention to what's going on at the screen at the same time, and some people can find subtitles distracting, which I can understand. I have ADD, so it can be distracting, but, I've gotten good at it over the years over watching plenty of foreign movies. But yeah, so I can understand it. Sometimes people can find the subtitles distracting, but I say, and I mean this in the politest way possible, get over it. If you can just get over if you can get over not wanting to read subtitles to watch some foreign movies, you will get some very good stuff. And I Saw the Devil is a great movie. But yes, so definitely I Saw the Devil, a fantastic South Korean horror movie for people just diving into foreign horror movies. At the number 6 spot, we're going to stay in Asia for now, and we're going to go over to Thailand with Shudder.
เครื่องพี่เป็นไรปะเนี่ยไอ้เหี้ยนี่ถ่ายดีก็มึงเก่งถ่ายเสียก็ว่ากูล้างไม่ดี
Now, I remember as we were going from the 90s into the 2000s, that's when you started seeing Asian horror grow popularity here in America. Like in the late 90s and the early 2000s, you had you had Ringu in Asia, and then the American remake in America. You had the Ju-on series in Japan, and then you had the American remake here in America. that idea of these creepy Asian ghost stories, especially Japanese ghost stories. The movie I'm talking about is from Thailand, but Japanese ghost stories became very popular in America and American cinema. You know, American movies would take the aesthetic and put it in a bunch of horror movies, and you would see images like that all over the place. You know, a lot of people love Ringu and Ju-on, and they love the American Ring and the Grudge remake. But for me, the scariest movie in that style, or kind of like that, is from Thailand with Shudder. And what makes Shudder so great is, you know, you have that concept of the camera, and there are many cultures in history that believe that if you took their picture, you would steal their soul, or steal a part of their soul, or something like that. And this movie kind of deals with that, kind of deals with the concept of capturing spirits with cameras. The movie involves this couple. You know, they are a couple of photographers and stuff like that. The boyfriend especially is a photographer. They get involved in this hit-and-run accident where they run over this woman. But there's more to it than you would think. It's, you know, there's more to the hit-and-run than just the fact that they hit this woman. And then they start getting haunted by these images of this woman. But it turns out that this woman might have something to do with the boyfriend's past. And I don't want to say more than that. But you have these great images of, you know, horror with photography, like seeing something in the background of a picture.
ความน่าสนใจของมันไม่ใช่แค่เงาแปลกๆในรูปเท่านั้นหรอกนะแต่มันอยู่ที่เรื่องราวในรูปมากกว่า
The climax of the film gets particularly good. You know, like, I don't want to reveal too much, but it has some great imagery and some great scares in it. There was an American remake. I never watched it. I had no desire to see it because the original I thought was so good. There's not too much else to say about Shudder. It is, it's a good Asian ghost story. And I can't say too much without revealing too much about the film. I think this is a perfect movie to go into blind. But yes, Shudder, horror movie from Thailand, fantastic Asian horror movie. Highly recommend it. If you like, if you're someone who enjoyed Ju-on and The Ring, or the American remake of The Ring and the American remake of The Grudge, I would recommend checking out, check out the originals of those films, and check out Shudder, because even though it's from a different country, there is some similarity to some of these moments there, or, you know. But anyway, yes, Shudder, very well done. Highly recommend checking it out. We're going to step away from Asia for a minute, and we're going to go to France with my number 5 spot, Them. When it comes to French horror, you gotta recommend it to the right people. A lot of French horror movies can be incredibly depressing. They can have some very gnarly stuff in it. They can be very disturbing, because if you recall, in the 2000s we had that explosion of French extreme movies. You know, there was Inside, which is one of my favorite French horror movies. There was Martyrs, which really punches you in the gut. Of course, you had High Tension, aka Switchblade Romance, which was kind of the boom of the French extreme movement. Even before that, you had some horror movies that were very depressing, like Baxter, which is a movie about this dog that talks in his mind. It's not like, you know, Homeward Bound, where other people can understand what he's saying. I never thought a movie about a talking dog could be one of the most depressing things I've ever seen in my life. But yeah, because of the subject matter, it can be difficult to recommend French horror movies to everybody because of how depressing they are and how far they go in certain places. Which brings us to Them. Now, this is another movie that I've talked about quite a bit on this channel. I love this movie. It's a home invasion movie. Couldn't be more simple than that. It's a home invasion movie. And I love home invasion movies because, one, they're terrifying because they feel very realistic of what people have experienced. And two, they are simple. And like I said, simplicity is great for suspense and horror. But the reason I recommend them as a French horror movie is, one, it's not as heavy as a bunch of other French horror movies, but two, in the 2000s, a lot of people were fond of The Strangers when it came out. There are a lot of people that would call The Strangers their favorite home invasion movie. I'm going to be honest, I'm not a big fan of The Strangers, but that's a tough topic for a different time. If you like it, great, I'm glad you can enjoy it. But anyway, the interesting thing is, there's a lot of people who love The Strangers and think it's one of the most suspenseful and scariest home invasion movies. Ills, or Them, the movie's called Them, but it's Ills in French, that came out in 2006. The Strangers came out in 2008. And Them got a release in America in, I think, 2007. Not to say that one ripped off the other. There are so many home invasion movies out there, and they all have very similar plots. But anyway, I think that Them is a better home invasion movie than The Strangers, and I think people who like The Strangers will like Them and appreciate Them. But yeah, it's a very simple plot. You have this young couple who live in this, they've just moved into this country house, kind of off the beaten path, and one night their home is invaded by these hooded figures. And it's a very, very suspenseful movie. It does take a little while for things to get going, but once things get going, it does not stop. What I love about Them is you experience the invaders the way the couple experiences the invaders. It's not like from a point of view shot or anything, but you experience it the way they are. You're with the couple most of the time. They look out the window and they'll see people wandering around their house with flashlights, but they can't get a good look at them, and because they can't get a good look at them, we don't get a good look at them as well, but in a good way. It doesn't cut away to a shot where you get like this long glimpse of someone in the background. You'll get quick shots of someone in the background just as they would experience as they're running away from them and trying to close the door. There are moments where they are hiding from these people, and we only see their feet because the characters only see their feet because they're hiding under something. It's handled so well, and it makes the movie scarier in a way because, yeah, we're not getting a good look at these invaders because the characters are not getting a good look at these invaders because they're trying to get away from them. It's well done, and the movie is only like about 70 minutes long, so it's not a very long film, and I respect that. With movies getting longer and longer nowadays, to see a movie that says we're going to be 70 minutes, that's all we need to be, that's very refreshing. Which is another reason why I can recommend it, because you get in, you're in and out, and you had a good suspenseful time. There are a lot of great French horror movies, but for people just getting into French horror movies, I think Them is a good way to start. I know there are plenty of horror fans out there that have probably seen either as extreme or in some cases more extreme than French extreme. But I do think Them it's a good movie to check out just because it's good, it's suspenseful, and it's a quick sit. Because of the fact that it's a quick sit, I don't think there's any reason not to check it out. So yes, check it out. And for the number 4 spot, we're going back to Asia with a Hong Kong horror movie, The Ebola Syndrome. There are these films from Hong Kong that are called Cat 3 films. They're Category 3 films, and they're movies that would get into more violent territory and more, territory in terms of sexuality and other things. Some are more extreme than others. This is a blind spot for me, so I've just been diving into it in recent years, and I would like to check out more. But my favorite of these Cat 3 films is Ebola Syndrome. The director of this did a movie also called The Untold Story, which is a great serial killer movie. I recommend that one as well. But the Ebola Syndrome, I think, is a good one for people getting into foreign horror movies. This is a bit of a complicated plot. You have this guy who is an absolute scumbag. He is a murderer, and he tries to help out, in order to try to get away from his killing spree and try not to get caught by the authorities. He joins this group that's trying to help out this village that is dealing with Ebola. One thing leads to another, and the guy contracts Ebola. Now, the interesting thing is, in this movie, it talks about how there are some people who are asymptomatic, like they become immune to the Ebola virus. They can still carry the virus, but they are immune to it. And it's a very, very, very rare case where this happens, and it just so happens that our killer in this movie is immune to Ebola. So you have the fact that this is a very violent guy, he's a scumbag, but he's also spreading Ebola to other people, and he's unknowingly spreading Ebola to other people. So it becomes this epidemic where all these people are getting Ebola, and Ebola is a very nasty disease. But you have all these people getting Ebola. So you have the cops trying to figure out where these outbreaks are coming from, and they're also trying to find this killer. They're trying to solve the mystery of who murdered this group of people, and it's our serial killer, and the serial killer is both responsible for the deaths and the Ebola outbreak. The frightening thing about Ebola is there is no cure. At least I don't think there's one. But anyway, from what I understand, there is no cure. So people who get Ebola, it's basically a death sentence. And it's just this fascinating, tense situation, because like I said, there is no cure, so there are people who get the Ebola virus. There are characters you grow to care about that get the Ebola virus, and they're goners. Even no matter how this film turns out, those people are gonna die, which makes it very tragic. And like I said, it adds to the suspense of the film, because they have to get this guy, but they also have to make sure he doesn't spread the virus to other people. And throughout the film, they don't know he's he did murder some people, and the authorities don't know he murdered these people, but they also don't know that he has the Ebola virus, so it's this double-edged sword. It's this very interesting. It gets so gnarly in certain points, too. This is... I don't know off the top of my head if it's another Cat 3 film, but I think it might be. If I'm wrong, correct me on that in the comments. If I'm right, let me know in the comments, because I'd like to know whether I'm right and wrong. So leave that down below. But anyway, yeah, this movie, it's another one of those movies that's not afraid to go there. It's not afraid to be dirty. It's not afraid to be gritty. It's not afraid to be very mean-spirited. This is a very dirty movie, and I love dirty films. This movie is not afraid to be filthy, but the reason I can recommend this one is I do think it is one of the more palatable Cat 3 films, because from what I've seen, because I haven't seen many yet, and I want to see more, but from what I have seen and from what I understand, from what I've looked into, Cat 3 films can go pretty far. They can go to some rough territories. The Untold Story goes to some really gnarly territories. And while Ebola Syndrome does go to some gnarly places too, it doesn't go as far as other Cat 3 films. So it's another one that's a little more palatable for people just getting into these kinds of movies. So yeah, Ebola Syndrome, if you want a dirty, suspenseful time that is both interesting but unpleasant at times, do check this one out. It's a damn good Hong Kong horror movie. At number 3, we have another Spanish horror movie, The Devil's Backbone. Now this one is, I guess it could kind of be cheating because I've been trying to go with one movie per country, and this was a movie that was filmed in Spain and Mexico, I believe. It was a Spain and Mexico co-production. But anyway, the movie was directed by Guillermo del Toro, and for me, this is one of my favorite Guillermo del Toro movies, and it's one of his most underrated movies. I hear so many people talking about Pan's Labyrinth when it comes to Guillermo del Toro, and while that's a great movie, I don't hear enough people talking about Devil's Backbone, and Devil's Backbone is a fantastic horror movie. Now, this is kind of a slow burn where there is a ghost story in this movie, and the ghost story is kind of happening around the edges of the story and slowly invading the movie, because it is mostly a war movie, which is why I feel weird calling it a slow burn film, because it is also a war movie. So there's nothing really, not that it's an action-packed movie, but I feel weird calling it a slow burn, because there's a lot of moments that happen throughout the film. It's not waiting to get to the big scare at the end of the movie. It's just that the scares are sprinkled in throughout this horrifying war-based movie. The movie takes place at this orphanage during the Spanish Civil War, and you have this the characters in this orphanage dealing with the fact that there is a war happening all around them, but you also have them dealing with this ghost that appears to be in the orphanage. So you have this war movie mixed with a ghost story, mixed with a coming-of-age movie, because the main characters of this film are a bunch of kids. And when it comes to kids in horror, I mean, these kids are not safe at all, because, again, there's a war around them, and there's also some very nefarious people in this orphanage that mean to do a lot of them harm. It gets pretty bad in this movie. So it's like you have the ghost, and then you have all these other dangers happening in the film. And while the ghost scenes are scary, it's not the main threat. The ghost story is a big part of the film, but it's not the main threat of the film, if that makes any sense. Last year, I did a countdown of my 31 favorite horror movies from the early 2000s, and I completely forgot about The Devil's Backbone. You know, that's how underrated it is. I forgot about it, for Christ's sakes. And when I remembered it, I was so mad that I didn't put it back on my list. I do want to do a review of this movie, so I'm not going to go into too much more detail, but all I will say is, you know, Guillermo del Toro is praised as a great director, and this is one of, if not his most underrated movie. If you like Guillermo del Toro's work, check out The Devil's Backbone. And to anybody, you know, who's just getting into foreign horror movies, I highly recommend Devil's Backbone. Just don't go in expecting a wall-to-wall scary ghost movie. Go in expecting a very good suspenseful movie. Like I said, this movie is fantastic. I'm not going to get into too much more details because I want to do a review of this movie. I might do it next time if you people are interested, but seriously, though, The Devil's Backbone, a great, great movie that deserves more attention, so definitely check it out. At number 2, we have the movie White God.
Rémisztőbb, hogy a kutyák nem is állatként viselkedtek, hanem mint egy összeszokott hadsereg egymásra figyelve.
Now, this is kind of cheating because, again, I tried to get movies that were like one movie per country, but this was sort of mostly takes place in Hungary, but it was a joint production between Hungary, Sweden, and Germany. And there are people who could make the argument that this is not a horror movie. but I do consider it a bit of a horror movie because it does fit in the animal attack genre, and for the most part, animal attack movies and killer animal movies are part of the horror genre, but it's a great movie. Like, I do consider it a horror movie, but this is one of those movies that it walks such a fine line between horror and not horror that either side could be right. Regardless, if you think it's a horror movie or you think it's not a horror movie, it's a great movie regardless, and more people need to check it out. So, this movie takes place in the not-too-distant future, because every future is not too distant. This is a world where purebred dogs are held in high regards, and mixed-breed dogs are kind of, in a way, they're illegal. They're kind of looked down upon, and people want to get rid of the mixed-breed dogs and only have purebred dogs. There's more to it than that, but that's the basic stuff. So you have this little girl who has a dog named Hagen, who is a mixed-breed dog. She ends up having to live with her father for a while, who does not like this dog. One thing leads to another, and the father forces his daughter to abandon Hagen in a very devastating scene.
Mit csinálsz? Maradj itt! Visszajövök! Ne menj sehova!
We follow the journey, like, we're dealing with the girl missing her dog, and we're dealing with Hagen's adventures in the real world as he's trying to get home. Hagen goes through a lot, and there are a lot of moments where he, is abused in certain cases, and it all builds up to the third act, where Hagen begins this canine revolt. It builds up to the third act where Hagen rallies all the other mutts around him, the other mixed-breed dogs around him, and they go run amok throughout the city attacking people. And that's what it is. That's what it is here. We have a dog revolt throughout the city. Now, the dog revolt is great, but it doesn't happen until the third act. But everything throughout the movie is interesting until we get to this point. We really feel for Hagen as a character, and this is not one of those movies where they do like the dog's inner monologue, where you hear the dog's thoughts, or the animals can talk to each other and we can hear what they're saying. No, there's no communication through these dogs, except for the fact that they're dogs. They're treated like real dogs. But the movie does a good job at portraying the emotions of these dogs, with the fact that they are just dogs, But the story is so... It is a sad story because we are following this dog that was abandoned by his owner's father, and he just wants to get home, and there are plenty of moments where he is treated horribly, but as we get to the third act, there are scenes where Hagen gets revenge, and it is so satisfying. This has become one of my favorite revenge movies, because it's a revenge movie from the point of view of the dog. And there is an ounce of entertainment that I get from it because, anytime I see a movie where there's, it's a horror movie where the dogs are the villains, or there's scenes where the dogs are, going after people, I can't help but, they can be very suspenseful, but I can't help but get somewhat of a kick out of it because I always think, what are the dogs thinking during these scenes? Because they're not really actors. They don't know they're in a movie. So you have scenes where the dogs are rebelling, and I'm just wondering if they're thinking, yay, it's playtime! But anyway, that's just a personal thing with me. But yeah, White God, a very unique revenge movie, and while I do consider it a horror movie, I can understand why people consider it not a horror movie, but I do highly recommend it regardless of what you think of it, because it is just such a good movie, such a unique movie, and it's just one of the best revenge movies I've ever seen. So yes, White God, check this one out, whether you're a horror fan or not, whether you think it's a horror movie or it's not a horror movie, check it out. It is well worth your time. And so, for the number one spot, we're going back to Japan. And the reason I wanted to use a Japanese movie for the final spot is because Japanese movies were my first introduction to foreign horror movies, and I became a huge Italian horror fan after that, and I love Asian horror in general, but Japan was my introduction to foreign horror movies, so I wanted to save that for last. And since this whole video is about people going out of their comfort zone, I wanted to end on a movie that was a film where I went out of my comfort zone for it and was blown away by it. So at number 1, we have Perfect Blue. Now, I am a guy who loves horror movies, I love Japanese movies, and I love animation. My favorite form of animation is stop-motion animation, but I love animation just because of the hard work that goes into it and the artistry to it. Whether it's stop-motion animation or hand-drawn animation, I love those, and I do have respect for CG animation, but you know, I do have a draw towards the ones that are more hand-drawn and handcrafted and stuff like that. But I have never really been into anime. There's nothing really wrong with anime, it's just never really been my thing. As much as I love Japanese movies, I always had a hard time getting into anime. But I've always had friends who were fans of anime, and they would recommend stuff to me, and I understand it, you know. They're passionate about anime, so they wanted to share it with me. I'm passionate about horror, so I like to share it to other people. You know, when you love something, you want other people to experience, and you want to share it with other people. So I understand completely, but I've never really been able to get into it as much as I would like to. Like, I've seen some of the Miyazaki movies. I've seen Spirited Away and Princess Mononoke, and I like those movies a lot. I will have to check them out again sometime. I've never had the desire to go back to them and stuff like that. So there have been some anime things that I have checked out and I have enjoyed, but I always had such a hard time getting into that particular genre until I watched Perfect Blue. A lot of people recommended Perfect Blue to me. You know, someone who is a horror fan, they say this is one of the best Japanese animated horror movies, so they said check it out. So I gave it a shot, and I absolutely loved it. Yeah, to the point where I can say this is my favorite anime anything, and while I can't say that I am an anime guy, and I will probably check out some other anime stuff later on, I still can't say that I'm an anime person, but I do appreciate the art and the genre, and I love Perfect Blue. Now, what really helped me with Perfect Blue is I went into it as a horror fan. You know, it's like, okay, this is an anime movie, but it's a horror movie, so let me go into this movie as a horror fan and try to enjoy it as a horror movie, and that helped me get past, you know, it helped me get past all the stuff that I stood back from when it comes to anime, and it is a fantastic psychological horror movie, and that is one of the reasons why I wanted to put it at number 1, because I'm not a big anime person, but I love this movie. It's about a former pop singer. I'm not really into pop music, but I loved this movie. And like I said, since this is about going out of your comfort zone, this was a movie where I seriously went out of my comfort zone and found something that I absolutely loved.
Nobody cares for you anymore. You're tarnished and you're filthy. Stop it! Stop it! I am not tarnished!
But yeah, we have this woman who is the head of this pop group, this all-girls pop singing group, and she's leaving pop music to try and pursue this career in acting. And while that's happening, she is dealing with this guy who is stalking her. But while she has this guy stalking her, she's also going through this psychological crisis, losing who she is, seeing this version of herself as the pop singer. You know, she feels like she's kind of losing her identity. So she's kind of going through an identity crisis. She's kind of drifting into madness. And as all this is going on, there's also this stalker who's, you know, following her around and stuff. But it is a fantastic psychological horror movie. And then there are stabbings in this movie. Like, the violence in this movie is very hard-hitting. And the stabbings in this movie are some of the best stabbings that I've seen in movies, and I do think that's because it's animated. While there are a lot of great practical effects kills, and I am a practical effects guy, there is this fluidity to doing violence with hand-drawn animation and in cartoons and stuff like that, that can make it more hard-hitting. I had to put this in the #1 spot, even though this isn't really a ranking. But the reason I have this here is because, again, this whole video is about going out of your comfort zone. And this is an example of when I went out of my comfort zone and found something that I love. So with that being said, even though this is not really a ranking, and I'm not, you know, putting these movies in any kind of order, I had to give Perfect Blue the #1 spot in a way, just because of the fact that how much I felt rewarded for going out of my comfort zone when discovering Perfect Blue. But yeah, that's this little video for this week. 10 foreign horror movies that I think are good for people just getting into foreign horror. There are so many other foreign horror movies out there, and there are a lot of countries that I was unable to talk about in this movie because I only had 10 spots here. There are other countries that I would like to check more stuff out from. Because, you know, like, when you do spread out to other countries, there are the countries that you get drawn to more, and that's, for me, it's, you know, Asian countries and Italian horror, but I would love to explore other countries as well. I want to see more Spanish horror movies. I'd love to see some Indian horror movies. I want to see some more German horror movies, more Swedish horror movies. I am a guy who loves Viking stuff, and I wish we had more Scandinavian Viking horror movies. I've only come across one, so if you know about more of those, let me know. But anyway, yeah. Foreign horror, there is so much good stuff in foreign horror. And like I said, there are a lot of countries that I did not talk about on this video, but there is so much good stuff in foreign horror. And if you're someone that is looking for originality and you're frustrated with getting the same old in cinema, I highly recommend checking out some foreign horror, because you will get stuff that feels different to you because of the different cultures, because of the different way that they handle cinema, because of the different things that people are scared of. Going outside of your comfort zone can always be rewarding, and when I first went out of my comfort zone with foreign films, you know, I saw a plethora of great movies, and there's so much good stuff out there for you to watch. If you're a fan of foreign horror movies, you know what I'm talking about. If you are just stepping into foreign horror movies, go on that journey and have a good time. I guarantee you are going to find stuff that you are going to love. I know you're going to. And that's it for this video. Very rambly, as always, because I'm a rambly kind of guy. Rufus is asleep on the floor. Tell him that he's a good boy. And on that note, thank you so much for joining me. If there are movies from other countries that I've missed, please put them down below. If you're someone who is just getting into foreign horror movies, let me know if I've interested you in checking out any of these movies down below. What are some of your favorite horror movies? What are some of your favorite countries outside of your country that you enjoy watching movies from? Put your favorite foreign movies down below. Let me know of other countries to check out other than the ones that I picked on this list. But yeah, just put some recommendations down below for other people. You know, I really want you guys to have your input in the comments section. But yeah, so yeah, my 10 foreign horror movies that I recommend to people just getting into foreign horror. Thank you so much for joining me in this video. Thank you so much for putting up with my rambling. We will have a review for you next week, probably in Rufus's house. But yeah, let me know if you would like me to review The Devil's Backbone. That's something I really want to talk about. But thank you all so much for watching this video. Thank you so much for the continued support on this channel. It does truly mean a lot to me. I will be back next week with another video. And until next time, I hope you all have a good day. And this is the Maniac, here to remind you that the Grindhouse will never die.